All right. Good morning, folks. We are excited to have our colleagues here today from a variety of state organizations as well as municipalities and the OpenGov organization as well. I'm Jennifer Slattery, the Director of Training here at the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns. And I will just open it up, letting you know that any of our trainings schedule is available on our website, and with links to register. I encourage you to take a look at that. I do send out updates, so if you're not receiving my updates, please send me an email at jslattery@rileague.org. And I won't take up any more time with that. I'm going to turn it right over to Tom Crosby.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Tom Crosby. I'm a solutions engineer with OpenGov, and I specialize in our citizen services product, which some of you might know formerly as Viewpoint Cloud. So I've been with the company since the Viewpoint days, about 5 years now, and I'm based here in Boston, Massachusetts. So very familiar with the Rhode Island State project, have been involved with it over the course of the years. So really excited for today's session. Today, joined by and very pleased to introduce our panel today, and just wanted to do a quick round of introductions. And if everybody could just say a few words about themselves, starting with Director Tanner.
Thanks, Tom. My name is Liz Tanner. I'm the Director of the Department of Business Regulation. I was formerly at Commerce Corporation when we started the e-permitting project.
Thank you. Elise?
Hi, my name is Elise Swearingen, and I'm our project manager for e-permitting, or you guys know it as OpenGov. And I've been with the state since about September of 2019, and with IT since about September of 2020. I'm really excited to work on this project.
Awesome, thank you. And Lori?
Hi, good morning. Lori Fox. I'm the IT director for the town of South Kingstown. I've been in municipal government for over 20 years, I think now, and been involved with Viewpoint and now OpenGov for the last 7 years. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your participation today, everyone. And yeah, let's go ahead and kick it off. I believe we're starting with Director Tanner today. And just kind of get the conversation started today, Director Tanner, can you provide a little bit of the history around the Rhode Island OpenGov relationship, kind of where it started, how that came to be from the inception?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. If you take a look at the slide, it's pretty impressive, how far we've come. So legislation was passed in 2012 at the push of the building industry to make it better, because it was pretty difficult. It took the state a couple of years to sort of get things together as far as picking out a vendor, which happened somewhere around 2015. And, we took a committee approach to getting the municipalities interested and getting them to kind of all work together. And we started with North Smithfield, and we just slowly started adding them on. Took a couple of years. We had this in-between period when there was a changeover in ownership between Viewpoint to OpenGov. But now we're working very closely with OpenGov to get the last of the municipalities on. And we look forward to sort of advancing the usage of the software to include all of the municipalities as well as more and more state agencies, and to get the municipalities ideally to use it for more and more at their locations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really kind of start to broaden out the use cases as well, right? I think that, initially when we started working on this project way back in 2015, kind of the way that we were looking at the platform was traditional permitting, licensing, planning activities. But as we go through the discussion today, I think everybody will kind of see that the software can do a lot more. The breadth of functionality is quite wide. So kind of a follow-up to that question. So what was the intent or the desire from the state, and to a greater extent from the industry, to move to kind of a more shared software environment?
So I think it's important to realize that this was not a government initiated program. I don't think that there was a lot of support for it in the beginning, hence the reason it probably took quite a few years to get up and running. It was really the construction industry that pushed it to say, this is extremely cumbersome. This is extremely a burden. It's incredibly bureaucratic, so they really pushed to do it. And, the state actually got the money, and the law said they had to do it, so there was a lot of pressure on. But I have to say that once the state finally took it under, really started looking at it and trying to do it, they were really forward thinking in what they did and in making it come together. So it was one of those things where it was probably a long time coming, but once it did, we've ended up creating really incredible product.
Mm-hmm. And so as a follow-up to that, and I certainly have some ideas on this that I'd be happy to share, but in your opinion, why is the current moment in time a critical time to adopt a cloud-based software platform for permitting, for licensing activities?
The pandemic, right? I mean, this is super critical time as far as how you're trying to make things happen. The pandemic's made us change and look at everything differently.
Absolutely. And so obviously part of today's session is to kind of get everybody on the call today a little bit more familiar with the Rhode Island State Project and, kind of our engagement periods. But are you able to share the enrollment calendar with attendees on the call today?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm proud to say that Foster's our latest community coming on. They just publicly approved it in the last week, I believe. So we're very excited about that. And we are hoping to get the rest of the municipalities on. The state fronts a fee of $10,000 to the municipalities to get onto the system. And those dollars have been sitting there for a while, and that's just not going to stay there forever. So, so there's really a push to get more, to get the rest on. So because those $10,000 are going to dry up. That's the sort of initial fee. There are extra costs for municipalities who want to do more things, right? And so everybody's got a different scenario. It really just depends.
Mm-hmm. And this is just kind of out of my own curiosity, but in your experience with the project so far, how far has that $10,000 gone in terms of getting communities up and running? Is that taking them a good portion of the way, or can you provide a little clarity there?
It's just the sort of initiation fee. It's the cost you pay to get into the system.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood there. That's my mistake. And so I guess one of my last questions here for you today for now. So do you have, a view, either personal or professional, about the impact of the American Rescue Act funding on Rhode Island communities and how that might be spent in light of the project that we're talking about today?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll say that, the old days of people taking time out of work to drive to town hall to fill out a piece of paper and write a check, those days are over, and so I just don't see the world really ever going back to that or having any desire to get back to that. So, I would highly recommend, that everybody take a look at and consider, making the investment to put many paper forms online to become electronic. It just saves an enormous amount of time and money. The citizens love it. The construction industry loves it. I mean, and the municipal workers, they save a ton of time too, and there's, we'll talk later about some of the things that are great, but it's really just a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I know Lori's spoken on this topic in some of the previous sessions that she and I have done together, but are you seeing any metrics, any data that you're collecting around efficiencies or, improved timelines that you'd be willing to share with us today? I mean, could even be anecdotal.
Yeah, I mean, every community is different, but something that used to take 2 weeks now usually takes about 2 hours, so it really kind of depends on which process that you're talking about. But, I think it's important to understand with the construction folks, they used to have to drive back to town hall to do the paperwork. Now they can do it from the construction site on their phones or at nights or on the weekends, so that makes a big, huge difference. My husband works in a town and he uses this system. And for him, I think the biggest improvement has been, the volume of people coming into town hall is so much less that now he can work on the projects that he needs to work on, and so that's important to him, right? Rather than having to, answer the same questions over and over again, or, you end up, talking to somebody or whatever it might be. So everybody gets a whole lot more work done with this system, and it just takes so much less time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've even seen the rise of virtual inspections, as you know, using this software. We have some really compelling functionality coming forward later in the year where we'll even be able to start a Zoom inspection directly from the software. So that's really exciting stuff. But next question for you, Director Tanner. So what have been, some of the kind of hard benefits that you've heard from either municipalities and or developers that are adopting cloud-based workflow management software like OpenGov Citizen Services?
I mean, it's just so much easier. Everything's so much easier. It's less time consuming. It's much more business friendly. An application gets submitted electronically with the plans uploaded at the same time. The required department reviews, whether it's zoning, the fire marshal, building, depending on who it is, can be done concurrently. And the fees are paid and issued electronically. So all of those things just account for seconds or minutes or hours here and there, and it all adds up at the end. It makes a big difference. And another example is I had an assistant who called in work one day. She said, I'm going to be an hour late into work, and it was because she went to town hall to get a permit for. She was putting a new roof on her garage, and she came in and she says, Liz, you're not going to believe this. They told me I can't even do it on paper. I have to do it electronically. And so while she learned how to use this while she was there at town hall, she's like, I don't even have to take an hour out of work because of the system. It's perfect. So
Right.
it's just a win-win for everybody.
Oh, that's funny. And so kind of on the flip side of that token, how's the response been from citizens in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key, right? They really love it, not having to go in and being able to do it on nights and weekends. We talk so much about being business friendly. And so not just our citizens, but our businesses as well. They're working 40, 60, 80 hours a week running their businesses. But now they have, if they want to do something at night or on the weekends, they can at least submit it, right? Because they're too busy running their businesses during the day. So it's again, win-win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're looking at on the screen here, kind of what a traditional workflow could look like versus a more digital, transparent workflow. And so I'm kind of curious, does this workflow, like the way that it used to be versus how it looks down in the digital transparent workflow, is that what most of your workflows look like today in the software?
So I'll say, so prior to e-permitting, the process was very cumbersome and very time consuming. The time spent by the building department just to make copies was onerous, and then kind of keeping accurate files. The dramatic change there is significant. So it used to be that the contractor would bring in a minimum of 2 sets of plans to the building office, and they would fill out a paper application. And then while a zoning approval could be done immediately, very often there was at least a several day wait. And God forbid if somebody was out on vacation, it could take even longer.
Right.
Then we had the contractor was then required to bring the plans and the application to the local fire marshal. So they had to physically drive it there with more paper again being used. And that's usually at a different location with a different stamp, excuse me, of approval that's needed. Then a contractor would pick up the plans from the fire marshal, pay the fee, and then bring the plans back to the building office for a plan review. And so that's another usually 2 to 3 day wait, sometimes longer, depending on the project type and the volume of permits. And then the contractor would receive a call back to pick up the plans, pay the permit fee, and then receive the permit, right? And so now all of that stuff is done electronically with no driving back and forth, with no dropping of checks. And one of the beauties of it all is that you can see where it's at, right? So if you're the homeowner or the contractor, you can see where it's at in the process, and they don't get stuck anymore wherever they may have gotten stuck before.
Yeah, some people have called it TurboTax. Some people have called it like the Domino's pizza tracker, but the workflow status bar. So it's visible both to the applicant as well as review officials. Really important aspect of the software. I'm kind of curious. This is more of a joking question, but I've always wondered: have you ever had somebody review a plan set from a beach or from their vacation location that you're aware of?
It's so funny you say that because, we have a real shortage of building officials in the state of Rhode Island. And so there are many building officials who work in multiple towns and they deserve a vacation too. And so this is exactly what they do is they can take their phone, their iPad, their computer, whatever it is, they can still get a vacation and they can just approve the permits there. And You got to
Right.
interrupt your vacation for a few minutes, but it's a whole lot easier than having to drive into the office, look at all these papers and do it all. So
Exactly.
between vacations and the pandemic, where things really were dramatically different, we never skipped a beat. And our neighbor states really struggled with this as soon as the pandemic started. The only change that we had to make in Rhode Island was to allow for virtual inspections, and we did that very quickly. Otherwise, we never skipped a beat. And as a former real estate attorney, my real estate colleagues in other states were telling me how closings just couldn't happen because the process was so slowed down. So it's really made a dramatic difference in Rhode Island.
Excellent. And just a quick follow-up there. What needed to change in order to enable virtual inspection? Was that an ordinance change or?
That was our fire code safety review board. They met that day. We had an emergency meeting. They met that day to allow approval for it. And so we were able to, do an emergency provision to allow for the inspections through the fire code board.
Awesome. And final question. So we've already talked through a number of different benefits in our time together so far, but are there any other notable benefits, maybe less obvious? A couple of examples, maybe, reduction in fraud, better data sharing. Can you talk about benefits like those?
I think something that people don't talk enough about is paper. There's so much paper being saved. And as much as, whether you're an environmentalist or not, and you care about the trees, you still have to store all that paper, right? And storage costs money. So by having it all electronically, not only are you helping the environment by not killing as many trees, but you're also not having to pay for storage of that. And then the ultimate storage of that, right? Because there's when it's in your office, and then you have to pay to have it removed elsewhere and kept for X number of years, whatever the rules may be. But yeah, it certainly reduces fraud. It absolutely is important to be able to data share, right? Because sometimes, well, that plan's different than that plan, or that plan got changed or tweaked. And so, you have all that information in one place. The stuck piece is particularly important. So things used to get stuck all the time because then somebody was on a vacation, or it ended up on the bottom of the pile, or whatever it might be. So there's lots of different benefits, and I just can't recommend enough to use it for more and more services.
Yeah, and I was thinking earlier, kind of along the same lines of reduction in paper, and whether or not you're an environmentalist. I've always wondered if bringing software like this into a community actually has a noticeable effect on the amount of traffic within the community. I don't know, but certainly when you were talking through the previous workflow, we're removing, call it 4 or 5 different trips in a vehicle that just no longer need to take place, which I think is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add is, I think there's a fear that citizens wouldn't want to pay for the service, because of, something like a dog license, right? A dog license in most communities is like $5. Well, if I don't have to take an hour out of work to drive to town hall to pay an extra fee to do it electronically, I'm more than happy to pay that extra fee rather than having to take my time to get down there, right? So I would not be afraid of charging a fee that it costs to do the transaction. If people want to come in, they can still do it for $5 and they can write you the check. But we're it was happening already before the pandemic, but the pandemic has really pushed people to do things electronically. It's just so much easier, and they'd just much rather do it that way. So I wouldn't be fearful of charging the cost of adding this kind of a service on so that people can still do it electronically.
Awesome. And Director Tanner, before we move on to our other panelists today, just wanted to see if you had any kind of final closing thoughts for our communities on the webinar today.
Just to say, don't hesitate to ask. OpenGov's a really great company. We enjoy working with them. They're forward thinking. They would love to hear what you need. They would love to grow with us in Rhode Island. Rhode Island is the only state in the country, at least that I understand, where our system is both municipal and state-based so that we can do things all together, right? So rather than it being just the city of Providence that does stuff, if the Providence transaction has to involve the state, it works with the state, and that's highly unusual. So OpenGov wants to work with us to try to make this software better and bigger. So you should feel free to say, this is what I'm interested in, and we'll, OpenGov will work with you to see what you can do.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. And yeah, kind of as a word there, and just a little bit deeper info on the project. The Rhode Island State project actually helped us get the platform to where it is today. As you all know, the state's been instrumental in providing feedback and insights and ideas as far as how we can improve the platform. So this is a very, not just New England centric platform, but certainly Rhode Island centric platform. So I'd encourage everybody to hop on board if it makes sense. Awesome. All right. So I believe we're on the next slide here. And so Elise, have a few questions here for you. So first question, so wanted to talk a little bit about the value of the relationship, and Director Tanner just touched on it a little bit, but want to talk a little bit about the value of the relationship between yourself and with, excuse me, with OpenGov, both at the state level as well as the municipal level.
Sure. So since I've been on this project, which was about late November, I think that we've been able to holistically support our active municipalities as well as the outstanding municipalities. Renata, who is our project manager on OpenGov, who's absolutely wonderful, and I think that she's here right now. So hi, Renata. We've been able to work as a team to really provide the support and troubleshoot for the municipalities if they're one-off instances or questions or concerns that they're having, or they're looking to expand and they just want to explore. And so before they get to the sales team or something like that to do enhancements, we try and find different opportunities for them within the base platform that they can kind of work around and create these systems that work for their municipality, because not every solution works for every municipality. Things are always different. There's always different players involved and different processes involved as well. But I think that we have a really great momentum to keep this safety net, is what I like to refer to it as, going. And so we want to work collaboratively to unify our efforts, because as you guys were just saying, that any of those instances where we talk about, there's something that you'd like to see, or there's something that you think that there could be expanded, it's probably not an isolated question or ask. And so the more we get to trickle up and work collaboratively and talk to each other, the better we can kind of inform OpenGov in the municipalities of what needs to happen and how it would work better for all of us. Because I see us as a team in this regard, and that's one of the benefits of living in the state of Rhode Island. It's 39 municipalities, and so it's one state. We don't have that county government. We get to work directly with our municipalities, and so I get to talk to them regularly. I get to talk to them on a daily basis. And so I think that connecting with the various users from the different communities is it's a win for both of us, because I get to hear what they need and how we can work together. So.
Yeah, and that was one of the most interesting things about the transition from Viewpoint into OpenGov. Certainly Viewpoint was, taking strides to create a community with our local government partners, around the software and around our best practices. But as soon as we merged with OpenGov, we started seeing things like, our roadmap and, having the ability for client communities to vote on roadmap items. That's something I'm personally really excited about, is every client community now has the ability to go in to the software, look at the roadmap and vote on what's most important, such that we'll, kind of prioritize based on need and, what we're hearing from the community. So really excited about that. And then obviously events like this, just a much greater capacity to bring everybody together and kind of have these discussions and these kind of thought leadership events. So next question for you, Elise. What are some of the financial benefits to participating municipalities from your perspective?
Sure. I want to kind of lead off of the question that you had asked Director Tanner earlier, was what does that $10,000 get the outstanding municipalities? While it is the implementation fee, and so that the state does cover that, it also works with about a couple of hours of configuration with the OpenGov team that either myself or someone else from the state, typically it's me, are there in those meetings with you, helping you configure what your workflow looks like and what your actual department is in need of while you're standing this up. And so you've got a lot of hands in the pot, but to help, kind of knead the bread, if you think about it like that. And so we're there.
Like that.
You can use it, feel free to. But, it's a matter of the configuration, it's a matter of the training, and then getting that for all of the users. And so you can shut down the clerk's office for a day, for a couple of hours if you'd like to, and have everybody trained on it. But it's also recorded in case you can't swing that for the day. And so you can reference that on a regular basis, and you get to really meet Renata, and you really get to meet Lee, who is also one of our colleagues that we work with to configure the municipalities. And so they're always there, and they understand, and they really work to understand what it is that you need, and listening and doing that active listening of like, okay, so here's the problem, how can we get to that solution? And so it is the $10,000 to get you through the door, and the state certainly takes that up, but it's more than just the financial piece of it. It's that hands-on with OpenGov and with the state that I can actually chime in and say, oh, actually another municipality was having the same issue. This is how we worked around that. And so there's the financial benefit for the outstanding municipalities. I think for the active municipalities, Director Tanner talked about, like, I was never going to register my dog in the first place because I was going to have to take off work to do it, but now I'm willing to. And I think it's the same for contractors even. And so, doing additional work, you would have to go back to the city and make sure that you get that permit pulled, blah, 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 come back. But now you can do it all right there on the phone. So you can do it on your phone, you can do it digitally, and you can do those change orders. But I think ultimately it's more than just the financial piece of it. It's the ease of use. Like, some municipalities are not leveraging the platform just for those like traditional permits or applications. They're also doing Little League signups and scholarship applications. Right. It's been a really transformative process because before we all kind of shied away from technology, and COVID pushed us to look for that digital option so we could stay safe and stay at home or do what, prioritize our family. And so now we have this technology integrated into our everyday lives. We're more likely to look for that digital solution. And so I think that this is where that partners up, that municipalities can reach out to their constituents and you can find out, like, what are the most applications that we're getting from paper? Can we digitize that? And that's something where you can reach out to me, you can reach out to the state, you could reach out to Renata and say, like, how could we move this forward? We'd like to start with this scholarship application. So absolutely.
Yeah, and from my perspective, so I'm more on the pre-deployment side, right, as a solutions engineer. But that's one thing that I always stress to prospective users of the software, right, that have not yet made the decision to move forward with OpenGov. And I mean it in my heart of hearts. This really is the easiest software that I've seen to work with. So that upfront cost for deployment, like, that will get you 95 to 99% of the way. In some cases, even 100% of the way, right? Some applications just don't change after they're deployed, but really, backfilling the gap on that 1 to 5% of things that do change year over year, that can be really difficult with other software vendors. And with us, it's just like, we're going to train you how to use the software, and then you'll be able to go in and make those changes on your own. So that's what really gets me most excited about the software in general. And so I guess sort of a follow-up to that question. So what are some of the benefits of having lots of municipalities across the state of Rhode Island using the same platform? And I know Director Tanner touched on this a little bit earlier, but kind of curious to hear your thoughts there, and maybe particularly as it pertains to knowledge sharing.
Sure. So I think ultimately the largest benefit is consistency. And so a plumber from East Providence can pull the same permit in the same way in about 31 of our municipalities actively. But previously, like she stated, you'd have to take the day off, or, a couple of hours off, come in late to work. You'd have to go to this municipality, this building, up to the second floor. If Bob's there, he'll sign it. If he's not, you got to wait. And then in a different municipality, it's 3 different buildings, depending on the size of the municipality and things like that. And so I think ultimately, I like to jest that it was solving a riddle, like how to get a permit or how to get these applications through in every different municipality, because it's Rhode Island. So I like to joke that there's the same 40 people in every room, depending on what part of the state you're in. And so it's now for 31 municipalities, it's consistent across the board. You can walk in to your house, you can sit down on your phone, you can sit down on your computer, you can watch your kids, eat dinner, whatever the case may be, and you can apply for these permits, whether it's Little League signups or it's actual contractor permits and applications that you're signing up for. So it's a huge win for everybody.
And I guess final question. So what are some of the best practices that you could or would like to share And, what are some of the results as, kind of part two for that? What are some of the results for teams or for each individual department or for your citizens?
Sure. So I think ultimately the best value add to this is what I like to refer to as bottom up innovation. And so if you think about having the right team at the table when we're deciding what the workflow is going to be, or even building out that application. And so I want to stress that a number of the applications, like the building permits, mechanical permits, anything that were achieved at a state level, are uniform across all of our municipalities. But certain applications are specific to the municipality or specific to a state agency. And so you need to kind of think about, like, this is the paper form, but the reason it was this paper form is because we've been doing it like this since 1998. Do we really need, does law require us to have this information on there? And so that's the policy thinking of it in a policy way. But what you're really thinking about is the clerk or the front desk person who spends all day problem solving with their constituents and answering the same 3 questions over and over, is how do we identify that in this workflow problem to solve for that issue? And so where can we take out the kind of confusion of different pieces, and allowing for help text in this application for this platform is really beneficial. But I think that also they're the champion for making this work. And so it's a change management tool, is working with the person who is going to be utilizing it the most, but then also the person who's kind of like the outlier who kind of shies away from technology. And so removing duplicative aspects of their paperwork or even their day-to-day is going to help them find it easier to meet with constituents and do a lot more problem solving and understanding those like wicked confusing problems where it's, there's 3 different departments involved and things like that, because that paperwork is already automated back here.
Right.
And so I just think that that's a really big piece of the implementation that we need to think about. It's not necessarily like the director of the department is absolutely there and needs to be there for the policy piece of it and like the strategy of it, but really the people who are working with the paperwork and working with the constituents are the ones that really need to help us build out the workflow and the process to make sure that it works for them, but really how the constituents think.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point, specifically about, translating processes from the 90s into modern cloud-based software, right? Our founder, Nasser Haja, he's got a great story that he tells, which I'm not going to try and recreate here because I'll completely butcher it. But essentially it boils down to one of our communities in Massachusetts had this process where they would stamp a check every time it came in. And they were like, we have to have that check stamping process. And he asked the simple question, like, why do you stamp the checks? And nobody could answer it. So they were like, okay, well, that's a process improvement realized right there. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that, and something that's really important to keep in mind going forward into any new software deployment, right, is what are our processes today? What's absolutely critical to have translated into the new software, and what can we do away with? And certainly our team's here to help with that as well.
Absolutely.
So Elise, any before we turn it over to Lori, any final comments or insights that you like to share with the webinar today?
Sure. So if there's any participants here that are from outstanding municipalities and you missed my April 21st deadline of coming on and then stating your intent, feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk more about this opportunity, or if you're an active municipality and we hadn't had the chance to meet yet, then feel free to reach out to me if you just want to talk about how you would like your process to work, or how you would like to solve for some of the issues that you may be having, because the more you use the program and the more I use the program, I'm learning more and more of the ease of use in certain aspects of it. And I mean, it's not perfect. Nobody's claiming it for it to be 100% perfect, but evolution is important. And so if we work collaboratively together, we're going to make it work for us. And so that's where, don't just dig your heels in the sand and say it's never going to work, because that's what we're here for. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elise.
Absolutely.
All right. And so Lori, first question for you. We kind of want to spend a few minutes here talking about timelines for adoption in the software. And I know we've already covered this a bit, but kind of to drill down a little bit, I'm curious, what were some of the timelines, from your experience for adoption with South Kingstown and using the OpenGov Citizen Services software?
Sure. So South Kingstown started using, the older version of a View Permit back in 2014 when we went out to bid for permitting and business license system. And then the state got involved and View Permit was acquired by OpenGov, and we've been using OpenGov since 2018. I have to say, as Elise said, nothing is perfect. You're never going to find a perfect piece of software that can do everything the way you want it. But I will say that the OpenGov platform is very flexible. So you can take what the state has developed with OpenGov and then adjust it to your local needs. So that's very big for us. We, like a number of small communities in Rhode Island, we have fire districts. They're their separate taxing authority. So we wanted to get them involved for the simple reason to aid our customers. They shouldn't have to go to the fire district to get information, to walk in with a check and a piece of paper. So we got them involved early on. And the same thing with our other departments. We tried to pull them all in early on, and we tried to really think about how we could best streamline it for the customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you made a great point there. It was actually something I wanted to touch on earlier, but the whole aspect of being able to call it vision share or knowledge share, actually using the software is what Laura was alluding to. We're able to take any existing record type. So think application form or document, sometimes fee schedules, but certainly workflows, and copy or duplicate a copy of that over into any other environment where you can then make those small configuration changes to make it your own. So really, really exciting stuff there. Certainly cuts down on time to deployment. But so you spoke a little bit about who was involved there, Lori. But can you talk a little bit about the approach in terms of deployment across the various departments?
Sure. So what we tried to do was take those paper forms, and I kind of took a first pass at them to alleviate all the duplicate information and information that's already in the system, because we grab all of our tax appraisal information into the system. We also grab a lot of our GIS data that we use as triggers in the workflow, so that if it's a historic zone, we pull in our planning department. If it's something that we're a coastal community in Rhode Island, if they're in a flood zone or a high velocity zone, we pull in the correct person that needs to check that application. And it's all happening at the same time. So it's working amazingly fast now from what it used to be, where the poor, resident or the business owner or the contractor had to go to several locations in town and pick up different forms with different checks and move that around. So once we looked at streamlining the form itself before we actually got it into the system, we met with all the departments. And as you said earlier, Nasser asked why. It's a simple ask. Why do you do it that way?
Yeah.
And it's not because, well, we've done it that way for the last 20 years or so, and it's worked. And that's great that it worked. But now with everything being digital, we really need to adjust. Our residents have to adjust. We have to adjust a little bit. And you need to keep your eye on the prize. And that really is making it simple for people to make government work for them. Get those permits, get their business licenses.
Right. Yeah. And I think you made a great point about meeting together with all the departments, right? One thing I continue to find fascinating as I do this work day in and day out is kind of translating a physical process into a digital one, because you need to be more specific about the questions that you ask. And the more specificity that you introduce into the form, the better end result you get from the applicant, right? So really cool.
Absolutely. So we tried to tailor a lot of questions based on triggers. So if it's something that requires a separate pair of eyes on it or a separate department going to it, if it wasn't something we could easily trigger from like a GIS layer, then we made sure that we asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing this? Are you doing that? So that it would pull in the right person. There are still a small handful of things that are so unique that it really, involves a person looking at it and interpreting on the application that, hey, we need to pull in this department or that department. But the building office, has really streamlined, and our poor building office has been down a staff member for the last, 6 or 8 months. Director Tanner talked about a shortage of building officials and building inspectors in the state. So we had a retirement. So we were short for a while, but luckily we were able to just keep everything going in the pipeline because COVID seemed to almost increase the number of permits that we were seeing because people were home and they decided they wanted to get those little projects done. So
right. Yeah, I remember you speaking about that on a previous session, kind of those little nagging projects, and people are thinking like, I'm going to be home kind of permanently from now on. I better make this, a place I want to be long term. So yeah, really good point. And I had one other question, but I just skipped my mind. So I'm curious, any recommendations that you might have for other municipalities that are thinking about moving in this direction and want to try and come on board in the near future?
Sure. Yeah. The biggest thing is really looking at your process the way it is today, and try and eliminate as much redundancy as you have in the process, whether that be it going to multiple departments and maybe it's going to a department for no apparent reason, but also look at things that you can take out of the process that are really not needed and not required by law to have that information. So we took advantage of a lot of the pre-built workflows, but we customized a lot and we integrated our outside agencies as well. As I said, the fire districts, we have 2, we brought those in early on. We work with our outside legal counsel. The folks there have access to the system in the case of a violation or a zoning issue that gets elevated to a legal process. And of course, you're communicating all the time with the business owner and the contractor and the resident. So it's important to keep them involved. And one of the new things that OpenGov added is you can set up notifications when certain things happen. So in the event of COVID, we created a temporary outside dining. And we did this in the matter of a couple of days. We created it. We had our business owners apply for it. And within 24 hours or less, we converted it to a permit. And at the same time, we had it notify our police department because we figured people were not used to having outside dining. If residents complained about noise or something like that, the police were aware that this business had an outside bar, an outside dining, outside music, that they were permitted for that. So it helped quite a bit.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually funny. Come to think of it, the first time I ate at a restaurant after COVID came to the U.S. was actually in Rhode Island, and I'm wondering now if it was permitted through OpenGov Citizen Services. Kind of interesting. And
Yeah, it
yeah,
may
actually,
have been.
yeah. And one of the comments that I wanted to kind of follow up on, just based on something you said earlier, and OpenGov Citizen Services does come to sort of represent that institutional knowledge. That's something that we've been talking a lot about recently. And I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is, COVID changed a lot of processes and, made the process move from purely physical, to kind of mixed physical digital to maybe more purely digital. But, kind of an added benefit there is, having that kind of copy of how things run in a digital fashion so that when there is turnover, or when processes do change, it gets much easier to train folks up on that. And I don't know if you have anything to add there, Lori, but just kind of a general insight.
I would just say something that Elise said as well. I mean, reach out to Elise and the state if you have questions. Reach out. I mean, the building officials all know each other through their association. The town clerks all know each other through their association, and most of the IT folks all know each other here in the state. We're small.
Right.
So reach out to other communities. We've, here in South Kingstown, we've had Smithfield and recently New Shoreham went live with permits, and they reached out to us, and we've tried to help people as best we can. And in a lot of cases, we can share what we've done. And I'm not saying it's going to be 100% for other communities, because we all have our little nuances here and there. But reach out. We're more than happy to share our business licenses and the different forms we've created in South Kingstown to any of the Rhode Island folks. We're all in this together. We're all doing the same thing, and the goal is just to make government quicker and better for the residents.
Love that. And that's a great segue into my next question for you. And obviously everybody's always really interested about outcomes, right? The software itself is great, but what are we actually going to get? And I know that you have some data insights to share, so I'm kind of curious to hear what have been some of those results for South Kingstown.
So for us, we've streamlined processes that used to take months. Sometimes a permit would take months. To now weeks. Many of them, depending if they're, simple permits like windows, doors, things like that, we turn those around sometimes the same day, sometimes the next day. So folks have absolutely loved it. Businesses, we have a lot of businesses here that are owned by, people in neighboring states or in other parts of the country. They think it's great that they don't have to come in and redo their business license. We also have a lot of people who have second homes here in South Kingstown by the water that live in New York, Connecticut. And some of them, because they've used OpenGov in their state, they were already familiar with it. So for them to put in, a permit was very simple. But I think the biggest takeaway for us has been the quick turnaround. We're all able to approve these permits simultaneously and get it out there. For business licenses, we used to send an envelope around with the application, and everybody had to sign it. And I think it was Director Tanner said if someone was on vacation, it sat there for a week.
Right.
So
yeah.
now we're not doing that anymore. Everybody's online, and we have backup. So if the building official is out, he has a backup. If the town clerk is out, she has multiple backups in her office and stuff. So we know where the bottlenecks are, and they just don't happen anymore, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess just getting back to kind of the ease of use discussion, in your experience getting the platform up and running, what were some of the things that made that setup easy for you in terms of integrations, or, can you talk a little bit about the IT perspective of the ease of use for setup?
Yeah, so very, very simple. Like I said, a lot of the permits, on the building side of the house were already predefined. So we took them and tweaked them to make them work for, for South Kingstown. The business licenses, we developed our own. I think at the time, I don't think OpenGov had ones out there at the time. I think they do now. So we developed our own based on what we needed. And I'm talking, we went through these things and, I can create something in probably under 30 minutes, depending on how complicated it is. The other nice thing about that we took advantage of, which I think is what you're showing on our slide here, is the storefront. So we've customized our storefront, and we've put links on it with information and letting them know that, if they're a homeowner and they don't want to incur the credit card costs, where they can send the check, what our current fees are. We link to our, zoning ordinance and building ordinances and things like that. So we try to customize and give them as much information in that storefront as well. And we've added on, you see that we have fire department. Actually, during COVID, we very quickly added our public services because they still had some walk-in permits that people needed to apply for. So we turned that around pretty quickly and got it up and running during COVID.
And you made a comment about, kind of customer service there. I'm curious, what's it been like facilitating the customer service experience through the software?
I have to say a lot of folks, especially contractors, because they've used it in other parts of the state, were very familiar with it. When we went live with our business licenses, we took a little bit of a different approach. So we actually, and this was pre-COVID, we actually had folks come in. We did some hands-on training with the business owners to show them how to attach their menus and their tip certifications and things like that. So we did a little more hand-holding in that area, but it paid off for us taking that time to do it. It makes it so much easier. And then when they renew, all we do is generate renewals. They go in, if the data is all the same, all they do is sign it, pay the fee, and it's off and running at that point. So it's the customers really seem to like it. We really get positive feedback from them.
That's
especially
great.
Since a lot of them live out of state and they don't have to drive to Rhode Island.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, huge benefit. And so I know that we've, kind of the underlying theme here, I guess, for everything these days is COVID. And, hopefully we're kind of coming out of this and, who knows what disruption could be around the corner next. But any other additional insights to share from COVID, ongoing, kind of any results that you saw, because of it or in spite of COVID that you might want to share with the webinar today?
Like I said, we actually saw a little bit of an uptick with people doing, projects at home and kind of getting their honey-do list done. We very quickly moved to utilizing Zoom for inspections. Again, a lot of the contractors were comfortable with that. We did have some homeowners and applicants that were a little unfamiliar and we help guide them as best we can. And that was the building official's office, working with customers as well as IT, jumping in if they needed some help with that. We really tried to keep the businesses going through that Take It Outside initiative. So not only were they looking, to the town, we helped them purchase tents and those igloos and heaters and things like that. We made sure that they were permitted for outside and still meeting code and so forth. But as they transitioned outside, we we tried to work with them as best we could. And as I said, we spun up some new permits pretty quickly and turned it around within 24 hours. The council made that promise to businesses that they would see their permit within 24 hours.
Wow, that's amazing. And Lori, I guess just in closing here, and we are going to spend some time here on Q&A. I see a lot of questions coming into the chat at this point, but curious if you have kind of any final insights or anecdotes to share on just your overall experience or anything you'd like the webinar to know today.
I would say to people, you really need to dive in, and if you're not implementing, this, you're really doing a disservice to your constituency and your residents. It's simple. It really is. I wholeheartedly tell people to dive in. You don't dip your toe, just go for it. Dive right in.
Love that. Well, want to again thank all of our panelists for today, and yeah, I guess with that, let's go ahead and dive into some Q&A. And I guess to handle this, we can kind of all four tackle these questions together. Maybe I'll just pose the questions as they come up one by one, and anybody that has anything that they'd like to share, we can kind of go through. Does that sound like a fair approach? Awesome. All right, so I've got one general question here that we'd like to start with, and I'll actually take the first crack at this, and if anybody has anything to add, feel free. But the question is, can OpenGov support beach permits and short-term rentals? And my cop-out answer is yes. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so the software is flexible, configurable to support really any application type. There are probably some exceptions based on very nuanced detail that might come into play with certain application types. Those have been very, very rare in my experience. So my role internally is to build out proofs of concept for communities that are still trying to determine, will this fit not just my standard cut and dry building processes and business licensing, but will it extend out to kind of more niche use cases? So yeah, we see beach permits all the time. Short-term rentals are something that we can handle. Certainly, Lori was discussing our renewal campaigns within the software. That can certainly be a really useful way to facilitate both of those processes on an ongoing basis as well. And I don't know if anybody if any of the panelists have anything additional that they'd like to add there.
As far as a state agency, the Coastal Resources Management Commission is actively, as Renata's stating in the chat, that they're actively leveraging their beach vehicle permits. And so the only process part of that is not digital or automated at this point is the mailing of the sticker that goes onto your car. And once we figure that out, then we'll be all set. So.
Awesome.
I would say that that OpenGov could definitely handle those. I will say that sometimes you need to be open-minded about your process. The way you do something might be difficult to replicate into a piece of software, but then sometimes you need to sit back and say, why are we doing that? Can we do it differently and accomplish the same thing so that it works nicely in the software?
Yeah, great point. And here I'd like to bring up that, we're always working on improving, upgrading, updating the software. And because it's a cloud-based solution, Lori can tell you this, but you're never going to have to download anything. You don't need to worry about version control. You're always on the latest, most up-to-date version of the software. And reason I'm pointing this out, so, things like beach permits, we're working with a community in New York right now. And one thing that they're really interested in for beach permitting, right, is anti-fraud measures. Let's have a way to visually confirm that, this is either the vehicle in question or this is the person in question. So today we're not able to yet pull images into documents, but that's something that we're working on bringing forward as a new release to the software so that we can accomplish more sophisticated licensing processes like that. So very exciting roadmap, and really looking forward to the future here. I'm going to give this one to the just kind of the general panelist group, but we've covered this a little bit, but kind of in general, how long does it take to implement, and what does that implementation look like? And maybe it's better to focus on how long, because I know we've walked through the kind of the nuts and bolts of implementation already.
Sure. So, I mean, I'll speak to it and then I'll have Lori talk more about like the configuration from the municipality standpoint, but ultimately you can expedite it given the calendars line up with your municipality and Renata as well as Lee for the configurations. We can expedite that, move that as quickly as you would need in a matter of a couple of weeks or a month. Or if you need more time, like you want to start out with one department and then build it out to the different departments as you understand how the workflows and where those funnels or like there's some sort of gates or something that need to be worked around, you can do as little or as much as you want. And so we've had some municipalities have taken almost about 1.5 years, 2 years, because they wanted to do it methodically and right. And if you're a beach or a vacation destination in the summers, ramping up to the summers and just coming off the fall is going to be a difficult time for you to work with. So you're only going to be able to use that, what I refer to as a school year, to do that configuration and thinking about how you are working through your processes. And so you can do it as quickly or as slowly as you want and feel comfortable with. And so it's not like you have to get everything done in 30 days, because that was a concern from some of our outstanding municipalities. So from my standpoint, that's my answer. Lori, you can add in as much as you'd like as well.
Sure. So I think something to consider is if you're trying to convert data from another system. So if you were using a different software vendor and you need to convert data, that kind of adds a little bit to your timeline, because you need to convert it, then you need to verify the information going forward. But if you're coming from, paper-based and you're moving into OpenGov, it can be done in a 30-day window, maybe 6 weeks. I will say where you want to spend your time is really testing the permit and the process. So your building office, your business town clerk office, have them key in some as tests, get familiar with it, get comfortable, because that office is going to be the front line for questions and people saying, how do I do this? Or I can't find how to upload a document or so forth. So that's where they need to do a little hand holding. But if they're comfortable with it, then they shouldn't have any issues. But I'd say if they're going paper to online, it's a 4 to 6 week process.
And I know that Director Tanner had to run. Director Tanner, I don't know if you're still on. If you are, feel free to say any closing thoughts, but thank you very much for your participation today. And then we do have one last question. I've just been informed that she has exited the webinar, but so this is for both of the panelists, and I'll certainly chime in here as well. But there's a question about how Rhode Island and OpenGov in tandem support municipalities who are going to be adopting the platform. And either one of you, if you want to go first, and then I'll kind of round it out with OpenGov support.
Laura, do you want to go first, or?
Sure. So I have to say we've had a very positive relationship working with the state. I'll throw it out there. I know municipalities, they hear the state's involved with something and they roll their eyes and so forth. And I can definitely be one of those people. But working with the project managers up at the state in the Department of IT, they've been great. Director Tanner has taken our feedback. I've been very vocal about things. People who know me know that I don't hold my tongue very well. So I would shoot off emails to, to the project managers and to Director Tanner saying, we need this. Initially I put my foot down and said, South Kingstown can't go live until GIS is integrated. And you know what? They made that happen. So they are listening, and they definitely want to be a partner of both OpenGov and the state. So I think it's worked out very well, and it seems to get better with our contributions. So.
Thank you, Lori. Your check is in the mail. So I would like to say that ultimately, I started this project in late November, and I came from the municipality. I came from the city of Providence. And so before I had come over to the state. And so I worked in our constituent affairs office there. And so I was one of those people on the front line who were answering the questions of, where do I pay my taxes? How do I get a pothole filled? Like what if the pothole popped my tire and things like that. And so I can understand where the constituent is coming from and working to help create that workflow from how would I, as an outsider, look at this workflow for your municipality, and then also working as a municipality. And so I can kind of see both sides of that. And I think that we have an opportunity to work very collaboratively. And so I've asked all of the live municipalities to reach out to me or keep me CC'd on some of the concerns and questions that they raise up to OpenGov, just so I can work collaboratively. And so I can say like, hey, OpenGov, these 3 other municipalities have also had this concern or this issue, and they've raised it to me directly. And so I work very closely with Renata. We have standing weeklies. I talk to Lee all the time as well. And so we're always trying to find out where it is that we can find a solution for the problem. And so it's the collaboration is there. And like Lori was saying, that there's a lot of folks who are like, oh, the state's involved, I don't want to be there. But I think that there's this new opportunity, and I feel like that there's a window opening for a lot of us to work more collaboratively and collectively to make this work, knowing that it's only going to evolve. And so we're here to make it do what you guys need to do. So
Awesome. Yeah, and I would close out by saying, Rhode Island has been a wonderful partner, both to Viewpoint and all the way through to now with OpenGov. So really, thank you for the partnership to the state and to all the municipalities. And I would say, from an OpenGov perspective, change management and training, really quite simply, we take a collaborative, consultative approach from the start. So obviously we're kind of post where I would typically be involved in, helping you make that initial decision as far as whether this was going to be the direction that you would go. But, moving that conversation on to folks like Renata and Lee on the OpenGov team that have both come up multiple times, all the way through to our support folks, all the way down to our, actual engineers for the software, and on the other end, all the way up to our executive staff. Really everybody in the company takes a mission-based approach. And like I said, a consultative approach. Really, ultimately we want to make you succeed, because our mission is to improve the way that government works and really power more effective and accountable government at the same time. And to that end, I always like to say that you're the experts on process, and we're the experts on software. And where that intersects is kind of where we do our best work. Ultimately, if you do understand your process, which I'm sure everyone on the call does today, it's really, really easy to translate it over into our software. And we're going to work together on that from day one. And so that's really our approach, right? We'll take what you know about your process and your guidance. We'll deploy, kind of get you through those initial hurdles and speed bumps on the way to getting the forms and workflows to where they need to be, and then iterate on those together over time. And then that's really when the training comes into play. Kind of leaving you with all of the tools and keys that you need to keep yourselves administratively healthy and up to date over time. And so that's kind of what I would say in a word. And, that's what gets me really excited about working for OpenGov and continuing to partner with the state. And so with that, I don't see any new questions coming into the chat. So again, I do want to thank Lori. I want to thank you, Elise, as well as Director Tanner, for your time and participation today. I think this was an awesome session, and I will hand it over to Jennifer to close it out with any final thoughts. And thanks everyone again.
Let's see if we can get the gallery going here. Yeah, so thank you, folks. I hope this was informative, and it was nice on my end to learn a little bit more about how our state and our municipalities are working together on behalf of making some ease of use for both you and our state residents. So if you have any questions or need anything from my end, or a follow-up, please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to facilitate that. All right, thank you, and I hope you all have a lovely day.
Thank you.